Hello everyone, thank you for joining us in your evening or morning depending on where you are. I'm really pleased to bring you this chat today. We've been really putting our heads together here at Cliniko trying to work out what can we do that helps you through this short-term period where a lot of people are needing to close their businesses or at a minimum heavily adapt how they're running their business. And I'd come across Heath and Wade, who I'll be talking to tonight, many years ago, maybe like 8 years ago, as they were very early adopters of Cliniko. They're from Corporate Work Health Australia, and what they've been doing for quite a long time now is they do workplace ergonomic assessments, and for a long time they've been doing it over telehealth. So when I found out about this, I thought that it would be really good to get them on for a chat with you all and have a talk about what they're doing, because perhaps this is something that you might want to consider adapting into your business. The main catalyst for it was really, we're in an unprecedented time at the moment where so many people are working from home, and no doubt they're not working from home in ideal situations. So maybe they're at their, kitchen table or their dining table or something like this, and they could really use some help for, preventing injury while they're in that period. And perhaps this is something that you could reach out to your patients about. Perhaps you can go to, mail out or message out to your patients and say, hey, we're now offering these, workplace or your ergonomic assessments for you working from home at the moment, and that's something we can offer via telehealth. So what I'm really keen to do, let me bring in Wade and Heath, and I'll get them to introduce themselves just briefly, and we'll get into a chat about how it works, what they've been doing, and how it could be useful for your business. Hi Wade, hi Heath, how are you going?
Hello Joel.
Thank you so much for joining me on this call. Now, I know that Heath is having a little bit intermittent issues with his internet at the moment, as probably many people around the world are now, with the huge demand on internet service providers, maybe primarily because of Netflix and things like it, and less so the work part. But first, I guess, Wade, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself. What's your background, and maybe how long have you been doing these sort of ergonomic assessments?
Sure, thanks Joel. I finished physio school back in 2003. Spent about 2 years in private practice on the Gold Coast before heading to the UK. Did 3 or 4 years over there in the UK. That's where I got introduced to the occupational health side of physio profession. That's where I met Heath, which we can talk about later. Heath and I established Corporate Work Health Australia back in 2010, so we've been heavily involved in both workstation ergonomics, and manual handling side of things. So we cover both sides, the stationary static work tasks, and also the heavy lifting industry as well. So yeah, that's my background.
And what about yourself, Heath?
Yeah, much the same as Wade. However, having graduated from the osteopathy, and like Wade, went overseas, travelled, we ended up working together, and then following that, we had a path for ergonomics and manual handling, and hence started that business here back in 2010. We've seen a big growth in the allied health professionals, and see that this is only going to be moving more forward with this sort of recent introduction of telehealth as being an opportunity that are not remote.
Cool. Thank you, Heath. Had a little bit of trouble with you at the end there, but I think we got most of it. I noticed a lot of people making comments already under there. That is fantastic to see where everyone's from. I was actually also wondering what professions we have watching in for this session. So if you don't mind, and if you're in the chat section, if you're able to place a comment and say what your modality or profession is, that would be very useful to us to help target this towards you. Also, for those not in the chat or able to comment yet, I think you just need to log into YouTube to be able to do so. And if you have questions throughout this session, please just put them in the comments below, and we'll try to answer everything we can see in there. So, do get involved in this discussion. There's a reason we're doing it live, and that's so you can ask your questions and we can help you out if there's something you want to know. But of course, we have a bit of info to share with you off our own bat as well. So probably the most, in fact, there's two parts I would like to jump on to start with, and maybe this is to start with you, Wade. So when you talk about ergonomics in a workplace or for their work environment, what actually are we talking about evaluating?
We're looking at the interaction of the human beings into the whole work system. So, today we're probably going to focus in a lot on workstation ergonomics. It is important to clarify that one of the challenges we have working in that space is when someone has a challenge, they're going to think we're just going to have a look at the chair and the desk, and once we fix that, everything's good, problems will go away. But I tend to refer back to, potentially ergonomics is a 4-year university degree, so there's a lot to it. So, we're looking at the individual and how they interact with the whole system. So, ergonomics is broken up into three parts. There's physical ergonomics, which we'll focus in a lot on today. There's cognitive ergonomics, so the brain, and then there's the organisational part of ergonomics, which is policies, procedures, systems, how work's organised, and the likes. So, it's the interaction of those three key elements. Heath and I, we tend to link it back to, we're speaking to health professionals tonight, so probably the best analogy would be the biopsychosocial model. So there's the bio part, the physical part, the psycho part, the cognitive part, and the social part, which is the organisational part in ergonomics. So it's a complex science. It is a science. It's important to understand that there's lots of elements to look at, and it's important to look at the bigger picture.
Sure, thank you. And Heath, we'll test out your connection again now. So what I was also wondering is, you obviously started doing this. I'm assuming your first sessions were not via telehealth, that you started doing this in person. And if that's correct, let me know if not. And then also how you started to do this on telehealth, what was the driver for that and how long have you been doing that?
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks, Joel. So, yeah, we firstly started off person to person. I'd probably say now, if I think about when we first started introducing assessment months ago, that came about from working with clients who have remote office sites, and we didn't have necessarily the ability to actually consult and be able to go and do that. Started that with was obvious phone-based conversation station, and then also that in the risk assessment, self-assessment form for us to then go through. That was sort of where we started, and then obviously in the last sort of month to 6 weeks or so, we've really revisited that process and we've fine-tuned that process again, because now our whole business has turned up on its head in the sense there's out there, and we've had to go our business to sort of still the business success point, but also how can we help our clients and the corporate businesses that we work with.
Sure. So Wade, the one bit I just missed in there, most of that was clear, but the bit I missed was actually how long you've been doing it. So perhaps you can cover off on that bit. So how long ago did you start trying this over a video chat type format?
As Heath mentioned, about 12 months ago. So, we've been doing ergonomic assessments for about 10 years now, but we've seen the need over the last 12 months pre-COVID-19 when a business might have a worker remotely and we didn't have access to a health professional or a consultant in that area, and we still had to manage their challenges.
Okay, so I guess if we look pre-COVID-19, say 6 months ago, what sort of percentage of your assessments were you doing via video chat telehealth at that point? Was it a big part of it?
No, we'd have to be honest. It wasn't a big part of it then. It might have been 5 to 10% at that time, but over the last month, it's become 90 to 95% of how we're trying to manage people at the moment. Yeah.
And are you finding that you're able to move the people that you're doing in-person sessions with, you're able to move those to a video chat? Like, what I'm kind of getting at is, has it, significantly impacted your business still? Have you dropped in business, or are you able to keep it at a relatively similar level, moving them across to a video chat?
No, we'd have to say that over the last few weeks, all our bookings because we're often booked out 1 to 2 months ahead at times. We saw, particularly over the last 2 to 3 weeks, we saw all our in-person bookings, both for ergonomics, manual handling, and the other things we offer, sort of all evaporate overnight. Yep. So, the audience is probably seeing with their individuals from their clinics, everyone's just starting to settle into a bit of a groove at the moment, and we're starting to see a lot of those in-person bookings come back and say, this individual or this worker or our team still has those challenges, so how can we sort that out by a video call or telehealth?
It's something that we've been putting out a bit of communication around previously also, is even if a telehealth version is not as good as an in-person version, is it better than nothing if that's the alternative? Because if you can't actually get out to this place and see them, are you still going to be doing them a service and providing more value than you're taking by providing this over, a video chat or something like that?
Absolutely. Like I could say with 100% certainty that there's a lot of value to add to. We split it into two areas, Joel. So Heath and I are obviously both clinicians, me being a physio and Heath being an osteopath. We manage our patients / clients at an individual level through the clinic. Having those clients, set up with poor physical workstation ergonomics is either going to be an aggravator or a maintainer for their problems.
Yep.
We're very honest with our clients these days, excuse me, that, we can't really help them from a treatment point of view if we don't get this stuff right. And then our second big area where Heath and I spend the majority of our time is helping organisations, so helping HR, safety manager, CEO, manager, etc., to manage their team of workers. And we can certainly delve into that if you like, in terms of the difference between the two. From a company point of view, there's a lot of legislation around how companies need to manage their teams. There's a duty of care there. So having that background in safety knowledge is certainly viable as well. But
it'll be interesting to see what, like, people that I guess following along and maybe make mention in the comments, whether it is something they're looking to do in a business or whether it is just, serving their existing patient base that they have at the moment. Because where I saw was a likelihood is you have a lot of people that, currently or previously were working in an office where the company was responsible for their work setup. And now with the prevalence of work from home, that's no longer the case. And if these, their existing patients can't get into the clinic, can't get in to see someone, and they're working from home, sitting in these positions that could, definitely, I expect, contribute to injuries they already had or bring about new ones, then some preventative care for their existing patient list is probably going to be a real opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree there, Joel. I would say, Heath and I, we always get asked this question when we run live courses. So, starting Monday, how can I start doing this service? And our advice is always, tap into your patients, tap into your clients who you've got a good relationship with already, and then start to offer this service there.
Sure. Heath, I just wonder, because I see your video shaking up, do you want to try just turn your camera off? I think there's an option in the chat tool we're using just to turn off your camera, leave your audio on, see if that's an option for you, and perhaps that'll help with the bandwidth. So I can bring you in for this more. So the other thing, just while Heath gets that sorted, so comparing a physical in-person assessment to a telehealth one, do you have an idea on, what's better, what's worse? Now, I imagine, maybe I'm wrong, but I imagine there's some things that are notably worse in doing so. But I'm also wondering, is there anything that's better via a video chat too? I might just check in with Heath now that it looks like his camera's off. Can you hear me still, Heath? So that could be working. Do you want to let me know, Heath, see how your connection goes with this? But what have you found is worse via a video chat or telehealth for ergonomic assessment?
And now, so you were just saying then, Joel, better with a telehealth consultation, is that correct?
Well, what's worse, what's better? What's the difference between them? Looks like I might need to stick with Wade a bit longer. We're not having you come through there. Sorry, Heath. But Wade, you're up. You're getting all the questions sent to you then.
Effectively, a consultation from an ergonomic point of view. Oh, sorry. You go.
And like he's a little delayed.
Yeah. Go for it, Wade.
I'm going to say just like an in-person consultation. So obviously me being a physio, I can reflect on physios the most because these are the day in, day out chats I have. The biggest challenges my physios have with telehealth is not being able to, to feel what's going on. So probably what's worse is it's really nice to be able to sit in the worker's seat, feel what they're feeling and say, oh, okay, now I understand what's going on with your chair, and then be able to adjust that. You can't do that via video call. So, we can run through some practical shortly. It's really going to be a case of, asking the worker or the individual to pan back from their camera, and it's more of an observation feel rather than a literal feel. That's probably the biggest challenge, but I feel like anything, when you get more and more experience with it, just like a physio, osteo, chiro, EP, myo, which is our audience tonight, that the communication skills and the people skills are really where it shines through with a good result. So it's probably just the inability to touch and feel what they can feel, and have
Sure.
to learn to do it through video or photos, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Heath, what I might do, if you want to turn your camera back on, because that didn't help us anyway, at least I'll be able to spot if your video connection looks good, and then I'll shoot questions your way if it looks like your connection's picked up. So as far as who can actually perform these assessments, I remember when we chatted previously, you'd made mention that there's actually certain professions in Australia that are sort of recognised to do so. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's certainly in the scope of practice of the professions that I just listed then. So physiotherapy, chiropractors, exercise physiologists, osteopaths, myotherapists. There's nothing written into the legislation that says you have to have either or of those professions. When we've looked up the registered guidelines for those professions, it's certainly in the scope of practice for those professions. I know personally at physio school I wasn't taught this, so it was further learning post physio school.
Yeah.
We certainly recommend that, whichever profession you are, that you reach out to your insurer and make sure that you have workstation ergonomic assessments applied to your insurance policy as a provisor there.
Okay, so presumably that's specifically in Australia, and you're talking about if people want to use their private health insurance to get a contribution towards these sessions, that you need to make sure you've got that particular code added to your provider number or something. Is that right?
No, sorry, I was saying for your professional indemnity insurance, Joel. So just make sure, whichever country you are, that you have that added to your own personal professional insurance, just like you would in the clinic now that you're providing it via telehealth and or in person at the company.
Yeah, makes sense. On the topic though, if I can diverge over to it, even if I misunderstood what you said last. So in Australia, I guess where you would have more understanding of it, if people want to get like private health insurance contributions from their patients, or Medicare even, perhaps through chronic disease management, something like that, is that available for this type of assessment?
That's a good question, and I don't want to shoot myself in the foot with the wrong information here. It's that's excuse me, that's evolving daily here, to the best of my knowledge as of today. And again, I'm speaking for physio, so the audience would have to look up their professional guidelines. We can certainly provide this for the EPC, CDM clients, patients, private patients, work cover patients as well. As long as you're approved to provide treatment for that person under your profession with the new government guidelines that are coming out at the moment. So the biggest advice there is, just like you would in the clinic, you need to make sure that your clinical notes are reflective of having an insurer or third party pay for that session.
Sure, makes sense. I'm just going to skip across quickly. There's a couple of questions that had come through in the chat. So we've got one, mainly interested in the technical aspects of telehealth and how to make the communication with the client smooth. Of course, I would think that Cliniko telehealth is a very good option, but what have you been using? Obviously, that hasn't been around for long either. What have you been using in the past?
I'm going to be honest, we have been gravitating towards Cliniko. So because Heath and I run a clinical diary as well, it's just easier for us to manage one single diary, add our telehealth ergonomic booking into our schedule, create an appointment for that person. They're obviously generated a link, and we can just meet up in there really well at the moment. You'll need to have your assessment form, split screen, to be able to write your assessment while you're doing the assessment.
Yeah. Well, what an excellent question to come through when that's the answer.
There we go. It is.
So we've got someone asking the platform we're using for this chat. So this one is somewhat custom built that we're doing for this conversation we're having now. I'm running some broadcasting software locally that I'm streaming up to YouTube for it. I might do a blog post or something about that at some point, because it has been a little bit of a headache to set up. Someone else is saying, what have we got here? Have you done any chats, or have you done any sessions with people overseas in doing it, or have you always done it with people within Australia?
So far to date with our workstation ergonomic assessments, it's been within Australia, but from a clinical point of view, overseas more than the ergonomics so far. I guess now that everyone's working from home, that all of a sudden our audience, our patient base becomes worldwide rather than the local community. So I'd certainly recommend reaching out to those communities, definitely. But to date, we've been Australia based.
Sure. Now, I'm not sure if this is something you've come across a lot, because I know that most of your work, again, is with, like, sort of in the corporate space, right? You're doing, a company would engage you to come and do this for their staff or for their team. But I'm just wondering if you've encountered yet, or are doing this directly with, individual patients, if people are aware of the need for it. Because I think, like, if, I've been working from home for a long time and never had an ergonomic assessment done. I've been working from home for 10 years and haven't had an assessment done of my home workstation. So I'm just wondering about driving the awareness of the need of it to people, or if you've had success in some ways with that.
We definitely have. I know my clinic advertises or markets, physio video calls, exercise video calls, and home office ergonomic video calls. So we certainly market to our database. I think probably most clinicians are going to build in this information into their clinical consult, whereas we would certainly separate as its own entity. But I'm going to say that people are probably more aware of it, or patients are more aware of it than we give them credit for. They're very aware that having the chair not set up right or screens too low is probably contributing to their problem. So I think it's it's really nice if you like, to doing this work in that space with patient-client database.
Yep. There is a question that's come through. Do you use any software to help objectify your telehealth assessments?
No, we don't at the moment. We certainly don't. When you move into the manual handling space and things like that, there's a lot of tools out there. But in terms of, if we just focus in on workstation ergonomic assessments, we'll do that visually, video and photos at the moment. Yeah.
On that topic, that was a question that came through from Rebecca, but if people are interested on a session on objective assessments via telehealth, not specifically for workplace ergonomics, I do have someone I've been chatting to about that, and I might do a session on it in the coming days. So if that's of interest to people, let me know in the comments as well, and we can bring you some more information on that. When you're doing this via telehealth, do you have any special equipment to do it? So I'm thinking, really your sort of hardware now. Do you need anything particular?
The biggest piece of equipment you're going to need is a tape measure. And obviously, because we're doing it via telehealth, we're going to need the client, the individual, the worker, to have the tape measure. So we're going to have to ask them to measure elements, because usually we would do that. Usually we would do that in person with them. But we're going to have to ask the worker or the individual to do that for us. Sometimes, Joel, we will use light meters and temperature meters and things like that. And that's when we start to get into environmental ergonomics. But I feel like for today's chat, if we just focus in on the physical, a tape measure, good photos, and obviously a good internet connection with good video is all you're going to need to get into this area.
Sure. So on that topic, something that I think people are interested in, I know one question's come in for it, is a bit the sort of workflow in doing a telehealth assessment for someone at home, because there is some things that are needed. You need some information in advance of the session. Now, I know we're actually going to, today, people probably don't know yet what our plan for this session is, but part of it is that Wade will do a little bit of ergonomic assessment on how I'm sitting at my desk here. I'm not sure yet which part we're going to focus on, so you'll see a little bit how that can work. And one of the things he asked me for in advance was a photo side on sitting in my chair, which I neglected to send through. I realise now as I mention it. But on that topic, there'd be some things that you ask for in advance. What is it? You send them some sort of questionnaire to start with that's asking them to provide some information to you?
We do, Joel. We have a range of assessments. We try to cater for, a company that might be trying to assess 500 people. So, a company that's wanting to assess 500 people is not looking at a really, really detailed assessment for all those workers, because there's budgets to work with. So we offer a basic assessment, which is no pre-work, if you like, and just the call. We offer our standard assessment, which we can go through now, which is a self-assessment form, including photos that the worker or the individual supplies to us before we jump on the call. Just like pre-planning for any job, it makes it go so much smoother. And then we have a detailed assessment, which is the same thing with more time for the workers or the individuals with musculoskeletal concerns. So we send out a self-assessment form, which we ask them to work through first. So they fill out their column. Then we get on the call and we go through our column, make comments, make adjustments, and provide recommendations there. But we do ask for photos of ideally where the workstation is set up in the home, So it's quite different if they're in a dedicated office versus on the kitchen bench in the kitchen. We ask for, a side-on profile of them sitting in their chair so that we can start to look at thigh support, feet support, spine support, upper limb support, neck position, etc. So yeah, we do a bit of pre-planning work with these video call assessments because you aren't there in person. So that information is really valuable during the assessment.
Okay, so they fill out your questionnaire, they send through some photos, and that's enough to do the first session where you'll get involved and start to do some assessing over the camera. Someone asked a question about some sort of course to do to skill up on this. Now, Wade and Heath do have an online course for this. They're also doing it heavily discounted for people that are watching this, so we're going to get some codes out and details of their course. Just as a summary for it, is it a 3-hour course, an online course that you have? Is that the...
We do. We've got 2 3-hour courses, Joel. One for workstation desk setup for allied health professionals, and we have another one, physical vehicle ergonomic assessments. So we haven't covered that much tonight, but workers who spend time in vehicles, so driving for a job, that can also heavily contribute to their musculoskeletal complaints. So there's an office workstation course and a vehicle course, and there's also a package of the 2.
Okay, so we'll get details of those a little bit later in the session. We'll talk more what's in it and provide out links to people and codes and things that you can get access to that. Someone's asking if they can watch later. Yes, this YouTube link that you have already, the page that you're on, we'll just have the full recording of it after the session is finished. You can watch it anytime. Okay, so what else did I want to check? So that was the process of getting going with it. Typically, do people, let's say if we focus on, home care, so a patient that might be already someone that listen that's in this scenario of working from home now, would it typically be more than one session that you would have with them?
I would say it's up to the individual to use a bit of clinical reasoning there. There's many workers who would just contact us saying, I just want to check everything's set up right. One session's fine. But then you might have your, 10-year persistent, discogenic back pain client where you really want to check in with them a few times because there is a little bit of trial and error to some of the suggestions to make sure that the changes, work for that individual. So sometimes we have that in the bottom of our assessment form. There's a follow-up needed, so we would tick follow-up and say, it's recommended we check in with this individual in 2 weeks. But if they're a client of yours, you can have those discussions with them just like you would in the clinic. So up to the individual person that you're working with.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So maybe so we can get something tangible for people to have a look at, if we can do some type of assessment, whether it's my chair or my desk or something, we can keep it small as an example. And both we get to demonstrate to people a little bit how it works, and I sneak in a free assessment of my setup here. So it's like win-win. So what should I do?
Well, we would always kick it off with what we call a task analysis, which is learning about what you do for a job. That's sort of days you work, hours you work, how much time you spend on the computer, etc., etc. But we'll probably skip over that for the point of today's chat or tonight's chat, because there's a lot of sort of questions in that, and not much sort of physical things that people can see on the screen. So the first thing in the process is the chair. Chair is a key player in this assessment process. So what I'll get you to do, Joel, if that's okay, if you can just wheel back from the camera and turn side on to the viewers and myself.
Now, should I be sitting up straight now, pretending like that's how I'd sit, or actually slouched like I normally?
I'll just let you sit how you would normally sit.
Well, it's very,
We can certainly. That's a common discussion. So start the assessment before you start the assessment.
How's my distance?
That makes sense.
Is this enough?
So that's perfect. So it's really important through this process that you work with the individual that you're assessing. So a lot of this process is education. So we want to know at the end of the assessment that the individual, that being you, Joel, knows how to work their own chair. So can you please take me through all the features of the chair just so I can understand your chair, because I can't sit on your chair and feel that. So if you don't mind taking me through that.
Sure. So the armrests can go out and in towards me, so I can adjust how wide they are. They also slide backwards and forwards, and they can lift up and down. The base of the chair, the depth of it can be extended or shortened. The chair's height can go up and down, and also have a leaning function like this that I can change the tension of it and also lock it into place. Now, these are all the functions that I know it does, not necessarily
Yep.
the ones I know how to do.
Do you want to show me the tension feature? So is that on your right side or the left side?
Yeah, that's on my right. Let me
Do
spin
you want to
it.
spin around 180
Can
degrees?
you
Yeah,
see,
beautiful.
is that far
Yep.
enough? There's two dials
I can-
here. One is, I
can
think,
see
the
that.
base of the chair, and one is the tension.
Yep. So if you wind that tension up sort of, towards maximum, is that going to provide the ability for you to put your full body weight against the backrest and it doesn't move?
I think I can lock it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's locked now.
That's a good point to start with. So most of the recommendations around working on keyboards and the mouse suggest that we should have the backrest locked in place when we're doing keyboard mouse work. So I am going to recommend that we just try some periods locked in place. So from a clinical point of view, that's going to mean that your core muscles or your spine muscles have to work less hard throughout the workday. So they don't have to have as much tension through them because you've got some support there. So we'll try that for a period. So we've got that locked in place. What I'm really keen to see is the recommendation is that you should have about 2 to 4 fingers at the front edge of the chair and the back of your calf muscle. It looks like you could fit more than a hand in there. Would that be fair?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Are you able to bring out, so increase the seat base depth to feel more of your thighs?
I think I have it at its most, but I probably don't sit right back in it. If I was a bit more diligent
Getting
in
close.
posture, then I've got about 5 there now.
Does the seat base come out anymore, or is that maximum?
I think that's maximum. Yeah, that's maximum.
So that's a good starting point because, before I did this sort of work, I didn't know that a seat base can be adjustable in a chair. So we're looking to provide somewhere around 2 to 4 finger space from the back of the knee crease there so that we get optimal thigh support. So lack of thigh support can put increased pressure onto the spine as well. So if we could bring that out further, I would. That's the limit to that chair.
Yeah.
What I am happy with is feet are on floor, knees are slightly below hips. Again, if I could bring the seat base out, I would bring that out a little bit further.
Yeah.
And what we're looking for also is, do you feel like you've got good support in the lower back and the upper back, so the shoulder blade area?
I would say maybe less in the lower back, probably more in the upper back. But I do know this particular chair, I can't adjust the lumbar support of it, whereas the one previously I had that I could.
Yeah, you did
mention that. It does feel a little light on there.
So we're looking for, foot support on the ground, and we may edit that in a moment when we go to the desk. Thigh support, 2 to 4 fingers from behind the knee is optimal. Suitable lumbar support and thoracic support, the audience will know what that means. And the recommendations that we work with chairs is that the backrest should come at least halfway up the shoulder blade. So we've clearly got that in that chair. When you're working with individuals at home, they might be your client, they might be a worker. They're not going to have chairs of this sort of caliber to work with. So we don't want to bias the audience in thinking that they're going to have chairs of this quality that they're working with all the time. So what we don't have in that chair is the ability to adjust the backrest angle and lock it into any angle we like. So do you feel like you're slightly reclined from upright?
I might be able to lock it at a different point. No, okay. What was the question?
You've got one of those synchronized mechanisms, so it usually allows you to lock it into what we say position A, maybe position B and position C. So you might get 3 options.
Okay.
The ergonomic chairs that we like working with more have one lever where you can set it at any angle you like and lock it in place there. So what we're looking for, feet on floor or footrest, we'll have a look in a minute. Adequate thigh support. Again, we would increase that a bit more if we could. I'm not going to recommend a new chair just because it's 1 finger short of what we're looking for. It's certainly not excessive. We've got lower back support, we've got upper back support. So I'm comfortable with the chair. Do you feel relaxed and supported in that chair, Joel, how it is now?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, good. Then we're going to come into the desk. Do you want to tell us about your desk? Is it height adjustable?
It is not, but it's a custom height desk. So I got it made for the height that I'm at now. Basically, it's kind of as low as I could get it to my legs without hitting them.
Interesting. Do you want to grab your tape measure and measure how high the desk is from the floor?
Sure. So what I wanted, and this was my understanding of ergonomics at the time I got my desk done, was that my hand should be lower than my elbow slightly. So being a taller person with the knee to floor height being taller, it can be a challenge to get the desk. Anyway, so the top of the desk is 710.
Yeah, so it's actually a standard height desk at the moment. So obviously, I don't know UK, US numbers. I know
705, but
Australian standards, New Zealand standards for desk height suggest 68 to 72. So it's in that, it's in that region. How tall are you, out of interest?
6'2".
Yeah, it usually works quite well. Like when someone says 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", then we're going to start to look at desks that are 75, 78, 80 centimeters. So
it is an ironic thing that I know my height in feet and inches, but there's not another measurement I would go away from my favoured metric system. But when it comes to height, straight back to it.
It's the one number. It's the one reference where people still say 5'11", 6'2", etc.
Yep. So
we're in metric, so desk height 68 to 72, and that's a really interesting point for the viewers to look at, because you might do an assessment, your worker might be 5'5", and it doesn't always work out like this. You might ask them to measure the desk and they say 75 centimeters. What we know is likely happening is that person is sitting with their arms elevated the whole time they're working, and if you can see by the gesture I'm making now, it's likely that person's going to get neck and shoulder tension from that, purely due to the desk being designed too high. So that's really important. If you could just check, we might just do the desk and the keyboard, and that might be enough for practical, do you feel?
Yeah, I think that's good. In fact, if we just go some at the time, if we just go to the keyboard, it's probably good, and then we can go on some other topics that we had to talk, and there's been some questions coming through. So do you want me to bring my webcam down to show the keyboard?
That would be fantastic. So if you'd sent through that side on photo earlier, we could have had a look at that, but we'll just have a look at what's going on keyboard wise.
We can check what's going on coffee wise, because I have a nice coffee.
I'm going to, and again, we're a little bit biased here because there's a mechanical keyboard going on there. 99.9% of the clients we work with don't have a keyboard like that. They're going to have a standard QWERTY keyboard. So one of the things I love about doing this job is you start to learn about what other people in other professions use out there. So mechanical keyboard, for anyone that understands those, is what we're looking for there. The one thing I'd start to comment on here, Joel, is I noticed there's a gel support there for your wrists. Do you want to tell me about why you're using that?
Yeah, so I have it because I don't know if I can show, but my keyboard is quite raised off the desk. And I just found that it was pressing my wrist down into the desk if I wasn't using it, just for like softening the surface for it. More that than the actual position of my wrist.
Sure. And here's where this job gets really interesting, because most of the guidance is that workers should not use gel wrist supports. And the reason for that is we tend to only get support through our wrists and not our forearms anymore. And we're really looking for most of the upper limb to be supported on the desk. So, if this was a live workstation assessment, I would have more of a chat with you about whether we could use that gel wrist rest on and off rather than on all the time.
Yep.
So sometimes you've got some nice cushioning for your wrist to stop that friction on your wrist, but then other times you've actually got better arm support to relax your neck and shoulders. So we'd go further down that path, and then we'd continue through the monitors and mouse and all the other elements.
So I had a good question coming through related to what we just did then, which was, would you recommend that you have your patient use their phone rather than computer? Because I was just thinking the same. If I didn't have a separate webcam that I was using and it was locked into my screen, it's very hard for me to move it around. Whereas if they were on their phone, they can position it anywhere and they can show you any angle. So it seems like a good thing.
Absolutely. I think that's a good idea. We would ask from 4 to 6 photos of the work area, so we've got a good angles of everything prior to the assessment. So I'd say if you don't have good photos prior, absolutely a phone that you can use to change the angles would be recommended. Yeah, definitely.
There was a question, I'm just going to have a look at some of the questions that have gone through. There's a question finding out about private health insurance reimbursements, things like Medicare, stuff like that. At the moment, we don't have any information that's concrete on it. I would recommend talk to your association to find out what could be covered and get advice. If it's something we can dig up, then we'll provide some information out to people about it. But at the moment, I don't have anything good to share on that front. There's a question, is Cliniko going to add a function to switch a customized background? We're not currently planning it. I'm not sure if it's available via WebRTC, which is what we're using for our video chats, but it's not currently planned. So what do you do to ensure the experience for an online consult is similar to the experience of patients attending in a clinic face-to-face? So this one would be much better for you than me, Wade, except I would just add that it's going to be different. There's no question it's going to be different, and if we try to make it feel exactly the same, it's going to be odd. And I think, we certainly got to embrace the medium, but what do you do in this situation? How do you make sure it feels like a good experience?
I feel like it's the same skills you would use in the clinic. You've got to kick off the consult with a bit of rapport building if you don't know this individual. So that's why, like, the start of our assessments are always a task analysis. Tell me about you, tell me about your job, tell me about how's working from home going. I know that's stressful at times, because there's the social isolation element of this, which we haven't got into at all today, Joel. So, use the same skills you'd use in the clinic, where you wouldn't jump straight into show me your shoulder before you've really started to build a bit of rapport with this person. So that would be my tip there. So, start and finish with some non-ergonomic discussions to make sure this person's how they're going at home. Yeah.
Now, from your side, do you just use a normal webcam or your laptop camera and built-in microphone, or do you have anything special?
No, I'm on my laptop now with my iPhone headphones at the moment.
And do you need any props or anything from your side? We talked about a measuring tape that I would have on my side, and I've got the items here. But do you ever have props or anything that you're using?
Not for workstation assessments. It's only going to be when we start to get into the manual handling side of things, where we're measuring weights and measuring pull and push forces and things like that. So no, it's good scoping, good planning, a tape measure present if you do need to know the numbers, because the numbers really do matter. Physical ergonomics comes down to the measurements. Do the measurements fit or not fit? So we're just a tape measure, a good laptop, good internet, some headphones so you can hear them properly, and away we go.
Okay. Do you know if there is, research articles or anything showing evidence of telehealth ergonomic assessment specifically? I know there's stuff out there for telehealth in general, but I'm wondering if you've seen anything or come across.
Correct. To our knowledge, no. So there's evidence to show, and again, I'm biased for physio. I know there's evidence to show that telehealth physio outcomes are on par to in person. There's countless research articles on all the different elements. Chairs, keyboards, desk height, screen height that we work with. So we would extrapolate the office research to the home in this process. I'm not sure of any specific home research.
Yep, makes sense. Do you do any product sales or anything as a supplement to doing this? So I just wondered, we talked about chairs at the start, and it definitely got me thinking that some other service you could be providing is helping people purchase chairs. Now, whether that's actually selling it or not, but a lot of the questions you even asked me when I rolled back there before started me thinking, well, I know some factors I'm going to consider next time I buy a chair. Now I'm going to be looking at the depth of the seat, or the lumbar support and the upper back support, things like this. So obviously you could assist people in choosing, but do you sell chairs? Do you sell keyboards? Is there any products that you can do as a complementary?
We don't. Heath and I have specifically chosen to not go down that path from a conflict of interest point of view. We never want any of our corporates to feel like, you've recommended equipment because you make money out of that. So we've really drawn the line and say, we assess, here's our suppliers that you can go to. Yeah,
that makes sense. With these type of assessments, so you mentioned briefly about was it a machinery one or a driving one or something? What was the other course that you have?
Vehicle.
A vehicle. So is this sort of stuff applicable though? Like if people are doing a lot of sewing, people are at their computer not for work, maybe people musical instruments, guitar, drums, it could be your height of your bench for cooking, whatever it might be. Is this stuff that also, it might be a harder sell for patients to engage you for it because it's not a money-making activity for them. But I imagine it would all apply the same, anything that you do a significant period of time of.
The principles apply across the board, Joel. So awkward postures, repetition, how long you do something for, static postures, the principles apply across the board. So whether it's a sporting field or, as you say, working on a bench that's too low, the principles flow throughout. So, there's not research to in those areas, not that I know of, to say that your kitchen bench too low causes neck pain. But if you ask your client what are your main aggravators and that comes up, I'd certainly recommend going down and assessing them in that environment.
Sure. So some other questions that are coming through in the comments. So let's say someone is forced to work from home at the moment. You contact your patient list. They say, I'd love an assessment. You turn the video on. They're sitting at the dining table on a dining chair. They cannot adjust the seat of it. They cannot adjust the angle. What do you do? Can you still help?
You can, but you can help in a limited capacity. So. I'd say that's our biggest challenge at the moment. So, Heath and I have the luxury of working with corporates where many of them have a home office set up pre-COVID-19. So, for example, we did a client last week, 25 workers. Out of 25, one of them was on a laptop. And then that's a luxury. So we get to do the full assessment as we would with your setup without all those hurdles. But in our workstation desk setup training, we've just added a COVID-19 work from home module, which is heavily focused around what do you do if the worker's on a laptop on the dining room chair, because you're really limited in your advice. Some of the advice is going to be extra cushioning on the chair, just like you'd recommend. You might have a towel or a lumbar roll behind their spine. You're going to have discussions around how much time are you spending on this chair or on this laptop?
What are your thoughts on standing desks? Because I'm wondering if that's a cheap ergonomic option for people. If they're stuck at the dining table, you can probably get a box under your laptop or your thing easier than you can get an expensive chair. Is that a solution?
You could. You just have to be very careful you're not exposing them to the risks of standing. And here's where the challenge lies. So there's pretty much very little research that shows that standing desks are effective at the moment. The product, so the standing desk, flooded the market before there was any evidence of their effectiveness. It's just really important to understand that sitting has risks and standing has risks. So you wouldn't want to get them off the dining room chair, have them on a standing desk, which we're best interest at heart, and then they end up with a knee problem or a foot problem because we've asked them to stand. So just like anything, any more than half an hour isn't great for us.
As we start to talk about that, I can't help but have this sensation that standing desks and sitting is going to be a controversial topic and one that many people are passionate about.
Correct.
Something probably tangentially related, and this is just something I've been wondering myself, is I remember a long time ago reading an ergonomic handbook that said your monitor should have the top of the monitor in line with your eyes. That was this guidance that I'd read many years ago. But I couldn't help but wonder, we used to have much smaller monitors, and our monitors are significantly larger now. And if you have the monitor, like I know mine, I've got the top of the monitor higher than my eyes because it's a big monitor and I'll be looking right down to see the bottom of it. Is that guidance still correct? Is there a general rule for monitor height?
That's a very good point. It's really, really important to remember with workstation ergonomics that there's really not rules. There's not rules, they're guidelines. So if they're just guidelines, we need to have a discussion with the individual. So I'd heavily recommend that people don't have a rule set in stone that they apply to every individual, because they will cause troubles for certain individuals. So their guidelines is the top of the screen at around eye height, and are you comfortable with that screen is going to get you a lot more wins than the screen has to be at eye height for everyone. Definitely.
Makes sense. Do you have chair and table providers, seeing as though you're not making any money off them and you can speak openly about it? Is there particular brands or suppliers of chairs and tables that you like generally?
We do. I'm not sure if it's easier to send you through some links for some of those, Joel. I mean, I'm in Queensland, so I'll use different providers to Heath, who's down in Victoria, Melbourne with you.
Yeah.
He's got some providers down there, Back Care and Seating. Bad Backs is one of our suppliers. We've steered away from Officeworks generally, but they are getting better at some of their equipment. I'll go direct to Gregory's Chairs at times as a wholesaler.
So is it fair to say that you're just looking for the configurability of the chair and maybe that it's stable more than a particular brand or something like that?
Quality of the chair is important. So when we go to those suppliers, we can say to the client, okay, the chair comes with a 10-year warranty. Any problems, 10 years, get a new chair. Where you're going to want to build up some really good relationships with suppliers is if you've got a client or a worker with musculoskeletal issues and you make recommendation for a chair and it takes 3 weeks for that chair to get there, that's going to be a problem. So speed, how quickly they get the chair there. And some of these companies have, occupational therapists that go out and set the chair up, which is completely different to the chair turns up in a box and a poor worker's trying to set them up themselves. So you really got to look at all the steps. Yeah.
Okay. What else we got here? How long would if you were going to do a home consult? Let's set up a scenario. You've got this patient that you reached out to. They're working from home now. They sent you the photos and the form already done. You do your first consult with them. Do you have an idea of the duration of that consult?
We set those standard consults up at 30 minutes, Joel, at the moment. But, every practitioner can, I'd say 20 to 40 minutes. We do our basic 20 minutes screening assessments, 30 minute standard assessment, and a 40 to 60 minute detailed assessment.
Okay. Someone's asking, how often do you encourage people to move around when they're working?
We work with try and get off the chair every 30 to 60 minutes.
Okay.
Which includes the standing desk. You need to walk away from the standing desk every 30 to 60 minutes.
Do you have to go sit for a few minutes if you're standing on a...
Now you're getting there. So the solution for standing is sitting. Correct.
Okay. When you do telehealth, or when you have done, do you take payments online, or how have you handled that so far, or have yours been more contract work?
We do because most of our work is with corporate, so the corporate will pay the bill for the whole team. But the luxury of telehealth with your online payments now is if I'm setting it up for an individual client of the clinic, I can get them to book online, do their payment, and then they just click on the link and away we go.
Yeah, makes sense. So a question came in a bit around the payment side of it. So you're right, we only have payments for online bookings right now, but the next step we're working on is having payments throughout Cliniko so that you'll be able to do it at the time of the session, after the session, send them an email with a link to pay, stuff like that. So that stuff is coming, although at the moment online payments is all there is for online bookings. Someone's asking about our body charts where they can draw in existing templates, but what if they want to annotate someone's ergonomic setup? We don't have that currently. We have talked about ad hoc uploading an image into a treatment note that you can then draw on. So the idea is you could screenshot your telehealth session, store that in the note, and then draw on it. I don't have a time frame on that part of it because we haven't started it. It's something we'd like to do, but at the moment, sole focus has been on priority stuff for during COVID-19. Someone asking collecting payments. I think we've covered that. Someone's asking for resources on telehealth. So I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. This is the therapeutic consultant. So if you want to clarify, please do. But if you just even Google Cliniko and telehealth, we set up a telehealth hub on our support site with a lot of information around telehealth. So feel free to check it out. It's also at help.cliniko.com. There's information for that. There's information generally for COVID-19 also in there. I think that's so someone's asking, other than the pictures the client sends through to you, are there any other sort of tests, pictures or objective testing measures that you also send them aside from that initial form? Our
initial form is quite detailed, so it's going to depend on who you're working with. So if you're working with an individual, it's going to be largely around their workstation ergonomics, but the majority of our clients are corporates, so they have a duty of care to make sure that their whole team is provided with a safe workplace, and their workplace is now their home. So we cover the workstation ergonomics, but there's a whole nother section on is the home safe to be a workplace. So we need to cover off on, is there working smoke alarms? Is there a first aid kit in the house? Is there a fire extinguisher in the house? How are they going to get out of the house? So there's lots of other things to cover, but they could build in body charts, they could build in pain scores, all those things that they build in clinically. And that's the beauty of it. You can flex the forms to accommodate your client base.
Yeah. So some other questions just quickly. Recording a telehealth consult, we don't have that in Cliniko. It won't be too soon. We do want to do it, but it won't be too soon. You can record it locally already though. So like on a Mac, you can just use QuickTime to record your screen. I'm not sure on Windows there'll be an equivalent. You're just going to record your screen and that'll record the telehealth consult. Just make sure you store it securely if you do. And someone else asking about this particular session. Yeah, so the link that you're on now, when this session finishes, it'll just have the full conversation stored there permanently so you can watch the replay anytime. I think we're caught up on questions there. So actually, I'm just wondering, people that are in the chat are making comments at the moment. I'm interested how many of you think that this is something you might start to offer to your patients that you haven't already. If this is something that you think you could message out to your patients with maybe a bulk email out or something and say, hey, we're now offering these ergonomic assessments if you're interested to do via telehealth as a way to have some extra business during this time. So if people let me know in the comments if that's something that you think you might do. And on that topic, we should talk a little bit about the training that you have available as well, Wade. So can you tell me, it's an online course that people can sign in and buy and do?
Yep. Yeah, it's an online course. We've set it up on a Thinkrific is the platform. There's 12 modules in the desk setup and a similar amount in the vehicle setup. It'll take them through a little bit of a grounding in work health and safety legislation. So, it'd be important to remember which country they're in. They might need to look up, what their local legislation is around that, just to set the scene for what ergonomics is. And it'll walk them through the process. So it'll allow them to do a workstation desk setup for an individual. And it will also allow them to do a vehicle ergonomic assessment for an individual in a vehicle as well. And vehicles are a little bit like your dining room table chair scenario before. They're a little bit more limited in the scope. The vehicle assessment course will cover entering and exiting the vehicle. You might have a 6'7" worker trying to get in a small car. That's contributing to their problems. The seat setup is certainly in there. Manual handling in and out of the vehicle. And with technology these days, a lot of workers are actually working in their vehicle. So worker might be sitting on their laptop, driver's seat, terrible posture, and that's causing their problems. So it'll walk them through the process and allow them to have a good, just have confidence to go and have an understanding of how to assess someone in those two key areas.
Now, someone's asking your online courses if they get CPD points for them.
You certainly do. ARPA registered professionals, we have the luxury of, if we do 3 hours, we can claim 3 hours ourselves. We've also got courses registered for CPD points with ESSA, Osteo Australia as well, and also the Myo Association.
Okay. So with those courses, to get that out to people, what we're going to do is we'll get the links updated. I'll get them from you and I'll get them updated to this YouTube page in the next 24 hours or so. So if you check back at this page in the next 24 hours, we will have links to the courses and all the details for it. We'll also mail it out to you. If you registered for this webinar and signed up for it, then we'll send out an email with all those details in as well. So you'll all receive that. If you haven't got that information from us within about 24 hours, feel free just to contact us at Cliniko through either info@cliniko.com or use the little live chat on our website or within Cliniko, and just ask and we'll be able to provide you that information. I think we'll get an article up on our support site for it as well. So we'll get all the course information out. Now, as far as pricing goes for that, Wade, I know you sent me through information which I don't have handy at the moment. What is the course ordinarily, and what price will people get it for with a voucher? Do you have that at hand?
Okay, here we go. I'm remembering here. They're normally $129. So each course is $129 Australian dollars.
If you want me to save you some trouble, I can look it up quick.
Packaged together, they're $179. I don't want to shoot myself in the foot here. I think individually.
Let me find it for you.
I'm pretty sure individually they were 79, so saving 50, and then the package was coming down to 149, saving 30. Did I get it right?
I did find it. You did get it right. So just to confirm that, so if they wanted both the workstation desk one and the vehicle physical ergonomic training, normally it's 179 for both of them, and with the code they'd get it for 149. This is Australian dollars, presumably.
Yes.
And if they just wanted the work desk setup training, normally 129 Australian dollars. Now it'll be $79 with the code that we will provide out to everyone. So if you're in Australia, $79. If you're in the US, that's like $4 at the moment or something like that. I don't know what it is, UK and so on offhand. But anyone paying Australian dollars right now, it's a bargain for you.
Yeah.
I'll just check if there's any other questions, because we should probably wrap up in a moment. There's a few come through. I'll just skim them quickly, see if there's anything we haven't covered yet. People that are asking about this session, yes, you can watch the replay from this spot. In a few minutes' time when we close this off, you'll see the full replay there. People asking for time frame on our online payments. I don't know yet, because we're just in the middle of building it. So this is putting payments through Cliniko, not just in online bookings. We just don't know how long it takes. So we're on it now. Too hard to guess right now, I'm sorry. Someone wants to know, how often would you go back for a review ordinarily with someone, Wade?
Again, depending on symptoms, 1 to 2 weeks, usually 4 weeks if they've got minor symptoms, but it's not going to be a 2-day thing like the clinic. I would ask them, trial this for a week, trial this for 2 weeks, and then we'll come back and check.
Cool. All right, I think that's probably good for this session. I don't want to keep everyone too long. Thank you so much, Wade, for joining, and also Heath, who may or may not still be around there, but thank you for trying. Sorry, we had trouble with your connection there, and everyone that tuned in to watch and get involved. I really appreciate it. If you have more questions on this, we will set up some pages in Cliniko support site about it. Send us through any further questions that you want. Post them on the YouTube page here still. We'll be able to get back here and answer and look up more information from you if need be. Also, I am planning on doing more of these adapting your business sessions. As I mentioned before, there's one that I'm trying to set up at the moment that is about objective assessments via telehealth, and there's some others in the works too. I'm not sure what sort of frequency yet, but I expect we'll do more sessions just like this one. As much as I can find good people to bring to you and information that can be of assistance, we will do so. We'll let everyone know about that. So thank you.
Thank you.